Good morning, Misfits. This is the Unprepared podcast by Misfit Athletics, where I come up with a topic before the show, but I do not tell my co-hosts or guests in hopes to elicit a genuine conversation. We have a semi-prepared episode today. Hunter and I know the topic already, but I typically get to cheat and prepare as much as I want and then throw Sherb and Hunter to the wolves, and we figure it out as we go through.
I am almost completely unprepared, so.
Excellent. Shout out to Aaron Graves. We asked for podcast topics recently on Instagram, and we actually got like an amazing list of podcast topics. So thank you to everybody who put the stuff in there. It was kind of funny because we did the Q&A episode, and while the questions were good, we didn't have enough context to really answer for the person. And then when we said general topics, I felt like they were even better than the questions. So we have to figure out how to ask better questions to get better answers. Topic of the day, day-to-day routine and how to build positive habits. This is an excellent topic. This is a very good topic. This is the kind of thing where we preach that, yes, we love to program. We've been doing it for 10 years. We put everything that we have into it, but there are just these other pieces that, like, they're not mutually exclusive, but they have to be more important because execution is more important than what's on the paper.
Yeah, I think the day-to-day habits are, it's kind of like the saying, little things are big things. If you're not paying attention, if you're only kind of putting your eggs in those that big basket, or if you've ever heard the analogy of kind of like only putting, like, if you've got a gigantic jar and you only put the golf balls inside, right, like the biggest things in your life, and then you don't leave enough room for the smaller things that help those other little things, then you're missing out. There's a lot of space between kind of the golf balls, the air that's between the golf balls and the jar, that we can fill, that contribute a huge percentage to our kind of day-to-day routine. So if we don't have those little things dialed in, and we're only concerned about kind of the headliners, almost like my 1 or 2 hours training in the gym, or that one big presentation I have coming up, and all the other things fall by the wayside, like we have to find that balance.
So I sort of split this into two categories when I think about this question. One of them is just the idea itself of, like, how do we build positive habits? How do we go from, I don't do this thing, I want to do this thing, like, how do I make myself want to do it and have it almost become automatic so that I really start to get some momentum? And then the other piece is maybe, what are the benefits of that? Like, once you do have a good habit, what are the benefits of it? And the reason my mind goes there is because I sort of have spent a lot of time trying to obsess over what, like, my morning routine looks like. And I've gotten to a point now where I can adjust a morning routine from like 20 minutes to like 2 hours. So like, if it's a Saturday or a Sunday, it might be stretched out. It might look like this, and this, and I can understand what the benefits of that are. But I also know, like, what are my go-tos? What are the things that I have to do in the morning? And I'll like sort of sacrifice to get there. So I think we should start with like the actual how to build the positive habits. Yeah. And then we can maybe talk about a couple of things that, you know, you and I do, or we've heard that other people do to get there. The quote that I drop all the fucking time because I believe in it and I think it really explains things really well is, the chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they're too strong to be broken. And it's really one of those things where once you get used to creating positive habits, you understand that you're like almost working with a little kid that lives in your brain from zero to when it becomes second nature. Like, you have to admit to yourself that, like, even though you want to get to that point, you want to get out there where it's just something that you like truly want to do over and over and over, like, you're working, you know, you're really working against yourself a little bit until you get there. Yeah. Like, and I don't think people realize that. I think they get really excited at the beginning, and then as they trail off, and then they wonder, well, I was excited. Like, what do I do? It's like, well, there's a dummy living in the back of your head that's just not used to this thing yet.
Yeah, I think I would liken that, if you're somebody who's listening and you're maybe not tying the concepts together, I would venture to guess, again, most people listening here are in CrossFit or they're into fitness, and that's a huge part of their lives and their routines. And even as somebody who doesn't really take fitness insanely seriously from a competitive standpoint, but and even there are plenty of days where I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything. I've taken more 2 or 3 day hiatuses over the past year than I probably have in my entire life. And I've recognized that I'm fine with that, but I also always kind of go back to, or I'll say to myself, man, I just need to move around. I need to do something kind of out of that habit and the routine. Like every single day I try to get some sort of fitness in, and fitness can be tricky because I think I'm kind of blessed with I've always had the interest in being physically active, being physically fit, but you don't need that kind of goal. We always talk about kind of understanding the goals and kind of why you're doing what you're doing. But I think as far as building the habits, it's like you said, it's just kind of the repetitive nature until it gets to the point where it's like, this is part of my day. It's not like an exit off the freeway. Like this is just a continuation of what I normally do throughout the day.
Yeah. And I think you maybe learn something about yourself and how habits, like bad habits, also exist.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like one of the things that I think we've referenced on a podcast before, but maybe not. Up until this sort of self-improvement movement, of the last decade or so, the word habit was considered negative.
Yep.
And now the word habit is considered positive. And that's been this complete switch. And they can just sort of find that from search data from different search engines for people who are like, how do I get rid of this habit? And now it's changed more to how do I develop this habit? So I think that that's a step in the right direction.
Sure.
One of the books that I'm sure at this point, most people have heard of already, but is just such an excellent book and really explains this well. And in a way that I'm very interested in authors that can get you to execute versus like load you with information.
Yep.
And that's a transition that I've had to make personally, as a teacher, coach kind of a thing. And Atomic Habits by James Clear, he's got the graph in there where he shows that 1% better every day for a year ends up being 37% better. Right. 1% worse a day ends up being 0.03% worse. So the idea that these negative habits, like people were thinking about it in that way, I got to get rid of this, I got to get rid of this. If we sort of shift our mindset and say, like, I need to add this into my day, that's when you can really start to get the ball rolling and understand how this stuff works.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the 2 books that I kind of wanted to reference throughout the podcast. But I think when it comes to kind of the actual execution, the thing that I took out of that book is and we've talked about this as far as like just any sort of development of a habit or routine in general, but it's to make it as easy and accessible as possible, both from a barrier to entry standpoint, a goal setting standpoint, just making it super easy to like check off the box. Like when you're getting started, understand that, yeah, if my goal is to work out 7 days a week, for going from 0 to 7 is not realistic. It's let's do 1 day a week for a month. Right. And then, so that incremental kind of progress. But the thing that has worked well for me is setting up whether it's like your physical living space, like your home or your workspace or whatever, but whatever it is, you set that up to facilitate the habit that you want to create. So a super simple one is me trying to be better about drinking enough water every day. And I've heard you say this, like you basically wake up, like roll over in the side of the bed, you're still laying down and you just drink like 4 gallons of salted water. So, but it's like, okay, I
actually submerge my entire body in it. And I just drink like in Beer Fest, I drink until the water disappears from the tub.
Yeah. So what I've got, I just have a cup that's like, I always end up going to the kitchen sink, whether that's just to clean dishes from the night before or whatever, but I've always got like a cup of water there. So it's like, I wake up, go over there, my cup is right there. It's literally like the action of filling the cup and then drinking out of it. So it sounds silly, but it's simple and it's like, and it's worked. It's allowed me to like make sure that I'm doing that because I do a pretty poor job of doing that, drinking water throughout the day. So that's just like a small way that I kind of develop that habit.
Yeah. And to me, the underlying issue here is this combination of both humility and people being a lot nicer to themselves. That's how you can start this process. The idea that Hunter cannot figure out how to drink a glass of water is not necessarily what what you're trying to say to yourself.
Yeah.
You're like, but I have all these other things going on, and for some reason I have prioritized subconsciously, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, 40 other things. I just don't remember to do this.
Yeah.
And like, that's the simple one, and I like to start with simple ones, but it can move out to we've talked about people that aren't like super into self-care, people that don't take care of themselves, people that don't like exercise, eat the way that they want to, all these different things. And it all starts with this idea that like, it's okay that your mind is going to these other places. That part to me is like the entire basis for getting started with all this stuff. And I do the exact same thing that you do. I like, if I know that I need to take a supplement and it's not super expensive, I buy 3 of them, knowing that eventually I'm going to need to take all 90 servings.
Right.
And I put them in the 3 places that I know. So like I got one in my backpack, one on my desk at work, and then one in the kitchen that's actually like visible.
Yeah.
And this is super important right now because the research is showing that like the best thing that you can do to combat COVID is pretty simple: vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc.
Yeah.
Like that's not, but like with everything else that like people have going on and how like hectic life is right now for people, it's really easy to forget that. Or it's easy to be on the couch, know that they're in the kitchen, and just go,
yeah,
like I'll take them tomorrow. I don't have COVID. What is it? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's not going to work if you don't.
Yeah, we kind of joked about how like we'd just be probably better off if instead of mandating, 14-day shutdowns or whatever, or stimulus checks, it was like the government just sent everybody a bottle of zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, and like some, I don't know, maybe some omega-3s or something like that. And
Yeah.
we'd probably be
It's
a lot better off than where we are now.
like, I don't want to, I know a lot of people have what we call here like COVID fatigue right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend too much time on it, but like as practitioners of what we do, we know what happens to a human being when they get exercise and sunlight and micronutrients. And it's really challenging to have a government that spends trillions and trillions of dollars on fucking who knows what. And we can't just say to people, okay, they've done the research. Like I was able to download a PDF of what they're doing at one of the leading hospitals. And that's what it is. It's just like, okay, the 500 milligrams of vitamin C, like the list is right there. And it's like, so why isn't that on like every billboard, like everywhere? Like we're worried, or like people are worried about their loved ones dying, but are they going on Amazon and spending $20? Like, please take all this stuff.
Incredibly accessible vitamin, just standard. Also, most of which you can get by just kind of eating well and talking about doing the things that we talk about in the Misfit Project episodes. But like, yeah, I was also doing a quick, like kind of going back to the habitual things. It made me think. I remember hearing a statistic or something, you might be able to like dial it in actually, is that what percentage of our actions are automated essentially, because our brain like works to be as efficient as possible and will automate tasks. And the easiest way to think about that is like ask yourself if you remember your drive to work today. Like if you assuming that you have been doing a very similar thing for the past few weeks, few years, months, whatever, go think about your drive into work today. And like I did that, 5-6 hours ago, and I don't remember it. It's the same route that I took. I did all the same actions, like left turn signal, right turn signal, all that stuff like that. Those sorts of things are automated. So it's easy to understand why developing a new habit would be difficult when just kind of pulling up a quick Google search. Like studies by neurologists, psychologists say that between 40 and 90% of your behavior is effectively like automated and you're on autopilot. So if we're on the conservative side of that, if literally half the things you do are already automated, then it's reasonable to understand why even adopting what seems like a simple habit like drinking water is a little bit more difficult than it seems, to at least go kind of like cold turkey, so to speak. Right.
And this hits home for me in a big way. Drew's dream world has been very real my entire life. Like I am like a very cerebral person and sort of live up there. So like I'll catch myself, I will literally be watching TV, like watching, listening, but doing God knows what up here, and then I have to rewind 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I didn't stop and look at my phone. I didn't do any of these other things. And I'm just like, what was Sherlock Holmes up to? Like, what is happening? I don't understand. What just happened?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did I even do that? So like this topic, like, as you can probably guess, if you're running 4 or 5 businesses and you're this kind of person, like this topic is super important to me, because you have to, again, like realize the things that you're not good at and be a little bit humble about it, and like create systems so that you can actually succeed.
Yeah.
Because balancing all of this would not be possible with like what my default setting is without, to-do lists and schedules and all that. Like you have to do that.
There's like I've found that there's an interesting, like if you have, it's easy to do, kind of like create those systems if you have very little to do, and it's easier and more efficient to create those systems and kind of abide by them if you have a shitload to do.
You're
like,
forced.
You're
forced in that
forced
direction.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that middle gray area that can get tricky. Like I think, and I'm sure everybody's fallen into those gaps. Like people who feel like they're most efficient at work when they have a shitload of things to do, and are just like somehow and then you start thinking to yourself like, oh my God, like when's all this going to stop? If I had more time, I could do X, Y, and Z. And then eventually when that ebb comes, you're like either so relieved that you have the break that you don't even do the X, Y, or Z that you wish you had the time to do before, or you just kind of forget about those things and you're just like, it's fine the way it is.
Right. Yeah. 2 of the like actual action items that I've heard that I really like are one of them's actually from Matthew McConaughey, which is odd,
Blessings.
but he wrote a book, so he did the rounds on like podcasts that I listen to.
Yeah.
And he talked about like he like buries Easter eggs in his to-do list, like literally ones that say like take a shit, because it helps him feel like he's accomplishing something.
Yeah.
And he stays in the like smiley face side of the mindset. So like he'll have 10 things to do and 3 or 4 of them are gimmies. So
Yeah.
when he looks down at his list, not only is he like already took a dump, he looks and he sees like later he's got to drink water.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can handle that. And then I'm going to be, 30% like of all the stuff that I have to do. That's great.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I really liked. And then for me, Atomic Habits sort of pushed me in the direction of like, okay, we really need to make these smaller habits. We need to break them up into these pieces. And I listened to a podcast with an author by the name of BJ Fogg, and he's got a book called Tiny Habits. And it's kind of the same concept, but it's almost like whatever is like a third of Atomic Habits becomes the entire basis for what he's writing about in Tiny Habits, which is a really excellent book. And he just talks about this ecosystem of like, you either are able to do something, like you have the ability, you're motivated to do it, or most people think you're screwed. And that's where he goes to Tiny Habits. He's like, okay, so Ted's motivated to get this done, so he's just going to do it. And that is certain things that we have in our life, certain things that are super interesting. And he's like, Hunter might not be motivated, but he has the ability to do it. So when he goes and does it, it's just, check off the box, we're good to go.
Yeah.
And then I can't figure out what the fuck to do. So he has people like on their to-do list is set the pill bottle on your kitchen island. It's not take the supplement. Like, and some people he'll like literally, cause he like coaches people on this stuff. Like you have the cap open and it's sitting right side up with a pill in it for like the next day.
Yeah.
You don't have to take the pill. Like, because if you don't take the pill, then you sort of get into that mindset of, I'm never going to fucking use this shit.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. He redoes his whole family, redoes their refrigerator every week. They call it mega fridge, and like they all get together and they're like, what are we going to put in here? And like one of the reasons he does is because it's all healthy, but because they get like the kids get a vote and his partner gets a vote, like and they all rearrange it, it's like exciting for everyone. Like mega fridge night or whatever the fuck it is like exciting for them. So then they remember they shop only for healthy stuff, but like, okay, well, I wanted this one thing, and they reorganize it, and they got the like I don't know what that Netflix show is that everyone's obsessed with. They got the like little bins that you put the food in, and then it goes into your fridge. So like he's all about like, what could you do that's not even the habit, but is going to like slide you into, like, the habit is grocery shopping and cleaning your fridge. It's not eating healthy, but like you've already felt good about like moving in that direction. Yeah. And like you've become excited and you've created momentum that you feel like you could never have. And then it's like, well, I mean, there's like grass-fed beef and vegetables. Like that's all there is in there. Yeah. And I'm excited because it's in like a shiny box or whatever, or like I got to vote on chicken this week, like that kind of thing. Yeah. And then people are much more inclined, he has found, to do the habit because he has created something that's easier than the habit that leads you into what you're doing.
You basically just like secretly set the habit in the middle of the room and then just like build everything around. Like, don't look at the middle of the room. Just like walk around it, and you have no choice but to. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. One other thing to kind of shift a little bit. I don't mean to derail this completely, but
do it.
I'm gonna derail it. One thing that, so again, assuming many of our listeners are like into the fitness side of things and are interested in becoming better at either, whether it's like CrossFit movements or certain physical adaptations. When we're talking about building those kind of good habits, one thing that I would encourage listeners to pick up and read is The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. And he does a pretty good job of presenting basically how kind of the best in the world become that way. And it's a lot of it absolutely has to do with kind of time spent. There's always that, I can't remember if it's in his book or not, but the best violin players in the world, it's like by fourth grade, they're playing 10 hours a week. By eighth grade, they're playing 20. By 10th grade, they're playing 40 hours a week. And the pyramid just kind of goes up in a logical manner. The people who just put more time into their craft are in fact the best in the world. But the specific thing that I found super interesting is what I learned about kind of like how we basically learn physical tasks, and that's through we all basically have this thing in our bodies called myelin, and it's essentially, I'm sorry, I'm kind of reading off here so I don't fuck this up. I skipped the page. So it's basically it's a combination of proteins and fats that insulate your nerve cells. So if you think of your nerve as just like a wire, like an electrical wire, and then you've got that, that red or black insulation that protects it so you don't electrocute yourself. Every time you practice something, the myelin, that insulation, gets a little bit thicker. And the thicker kind of that insulation, the more myelin we have, the faster and the more efficient our brain sends signals to our body to execute task A. And the way that he basically outlined how kind of the best in the world do that, whether you're a tennis player, tennis is probably a bad example because we joked about that, but like a violin player was a great example, but they go slowly. They practice their craft both slowly and in segmented chunks. And he did actually reference tennis players, and basically it effectively becomes repetition. And in tasks that can be performed more slowly. So for example, playing a section of a violin piece, or I don't know what the term for that is. What's a song? A song. I feel like
chunk.
Song chunk. Okay, yep. Got it. Yeah, that's the technical term. The technical part of a song is called a chunk. But they play that chunk of music very slowly and will just repeat it, as opposed to what most people think is probably like, either trying to play it at speed, or maybe a lot of people think that the concept of doing something faster than they would in actual execution makes them better. And you and I were talking about this before, and the idea that if you see a baseball player who's in the on deck circle, they're swinging either two bats or a bat with like the donut around it. So we're making the bat heavier so that when you take that off, the bat feels lighter, but we learned that actually slows bat speed down. and kind of screws with the athlete's timing. So if we kind of apply that principle to learning other things, practicing slowly might actually be better at kind of developing that habit, especially when it comes to a more complex movement or combination of movement or anything outside of the gym, so to speak.
Yeah, this one relates to in the gym in such a like massive way.
Yeah.
Because we talk about, you get athletes who only try muscle ups like during the open after their heart rate's been jacked up to like 170, and they wonder why they can't necessarily do this. Or you like feel like you're getting better at something, and then again you get thrown to the wolves and it's super high intensity. So that's why we have intervals, why we have skill work, why we do all this stuff. And then for me, I can take it even a step further. I get better at moving through coaching than I do through like going out and doing the movement in intensity.
Just like the osmosis of watching somebody
just
do it.
This, yes,
Coaching.
just this concept of, and in my mind, the reason this connects for me is because I move slowly. So like I had long stretches of time where I didn't touch a barbell. And I can go back to the baseball analogy. Like I watched a few videos where like there's kind of a new wave of hitting in Major League Baseball right now. They have like a bigger leg kick, and they're doing they're worried about launch angle of the ball, like where they hit the ball, that kind of thing. And baseball purists hate it, but they're better. So like there's that. And just thinking through the idea of how these things are executed in slow motion allows me to perform them. Like I can go through and I can do the visualization. I can say, okay, this is when I'm going to do this. This is when I'm going to do that. And I find that it's easier. Like yesterday we shot a video and I snatched and overhead squatted for the first time in God knows how long.
Yeah.
But I think about it all the time. And I think about like, what's the cue that's going to move this athlete finally over that, like, I can't move my feet, I can't do this. Like once it's dynamic, and it's like, okay, so how do I work through this? And just, again, it brings us all the way back to like these manageable chunks. Like, and these ideas of like understanding movement, or understanding what it's going to take and what steps it's going to take to develop a good habit. That's more important than just like all in on this, going as hard as I can, and then trailing off once momentum's not there anymore.
Yeah. I'd be curious to know, do you think that's because you as a person learn or have a good understanding of like kind of the physics behind movements? Or would you apply that to other things? Like if you watch somebody
I think it applies to just the overall fact that I'm obsessed with human movement, and it tracked back to prior to when I was in CrossFit. Like I had already heard about a lot of the form running stuff, and like would watch like one of the not actually rest in peace, but rest in peace, Jacoby Ellsbury, like basically the greatest athlete to ever play baseball, but he's kind of soft and yeah. Anyways, the way he runs, it looks like the Roadrunner, the spinning circle, the way he runs, like with his knee tucked all the way up and his heel like by his butt, like it is in full sprint, picture perfect of what they say you're supposed to do in like the pose running stuff. Yeah. And he was faster than everyone. So it just kind of made sense to me. So I would say that because I'm obsessed with it, that's sort of where my mind goes, but also because I try to shift perspectives. I try to think about a movement from the point of view of I can't do this, even though in reality I can.
Yeah.
What is it like for an athlete to be stuck in that mindset? Perfect example. I have two athletes right now that cannot shift their weight from the middle of their foot to the back of the foot as they go from the knee to the hip in the Olympic lifts. They can't do it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, my knees are coming forward, so obviously my heels are coming up. And for me, in my mind, I'm like, well, it's the exact opposite. I push my knees forward with my heels. This doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So I literally go out there and I grab a training bar and I try to think of both, and I go through it, and it's then that you can start to understand movement from different perspectives. And as a coach, not just hammer people with the exact same cues over and over and over. It's like, well, I heard this cue and it worked really well for me. Could mean absolutely nothing to someone else.
Yeah.
So when I go out there and I will literally do it wrong and be like, why would I do this?
Yeah.
And what could the change be?
But I would, and then like similarly, so if you gave those athletes, if you said, hey, I want you to go grab a PVC pipe,
right,
which they'd look at you like you had a dick growing out of your forehead, like, and you do that. Am I allowed to say that? Sorry. Okay. If you said, hey,
we're still misfits, folks.
PVC pipe, and I want you to do this literally as slow as possible, they would do it. Like they would be fine, right? They'd be able to get the bar from their knees into their hip with their foot flat on the floor and be in a nice power position. And then they could slowly extend and pull themselves in the bottom of a squat. And then it's like, you have to say to yourself, okay, so you can do it.
Right.
You did it really slow. Let's speed it up like half a millisecond. I was going to say millimeter. Speed it up half a millimeter, folks. And then where does it break down? And to me, that's the interesting thing about the kind of the myelin reference, the Daniel Coyle stuff. It's like there is a line. There are very few things that we probably can't get somebody to do incredibly slowly. In our community, though, and specifically, it's so fucking hard to convince people to slow down, take that one step back, to take the 5 steps forward. And like you said, like, why can't I do muscle ups only in the open? It's like, well, you're like, yeah, adrenaline's flying, and then like Tuesday at 6 a.m. affiliate class, and you're just like, okay, I'm gonna kill somebody. Like, like what gives? And it's like, well, like, it's not that I'm not gonna say you have no one to blame but yourself, but like, think about those things. We can, if we slow things down, we might be able to build those habits. And I love, we're working with a teenager now who's got pretty incredible capacity and potential to be really strong, a really good athlete. And it's so much fun out there because I'm like, he's got like the equivalent of like, I don't know, like 10 days worth of like actual coaching experience. So if we coach him for 3 days,
he's got the engine of a regionals athlete and like,
yeah, it's like his like average. I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. He's had such little coaching that any amount of coaching him correctly drags his like average, like what he thinks is correct, so far in the right direction that it's like literally went from 0 to 7 muscle ups in like 2 days. And obviously he's a super athletic kid, but the point is like, when you're learning something new, you have an incredible advantage to only learn how to do it the correct way. Yeah. If you don't know how to do it wrong, you're never going to, like, short of the, technical error or something like that. But if you don't know how to do it incorrectly, tell me how you learn anything, and like what habits you developed as a kid that you're just like, shit, I wish I did this differently because I've been doing it that way my entire life. And you're probably not going to change that habit because you've had it ingrained in you.
Right. And one of the ways for me to know that I believe in all of this stuff and I'm not just sort of reading it and then regurgitating is one of my favorite things to do with athletes I call barbell therapy. It's 4 positions and it's 3 variations of the lift. So you have at each position with each lift, you go to all 4 positions and then you just basically cycle through and you learn it. The 2 people that I currently have doing that are the person that you just referenced, a teenager who's trying to sort of figure movement out, and then Caroline, who is focusing almost solely on conditioning leading up to the Open and the finer points of the Olympic lifts. Yeah. So you have people on as opposite ends of the spectrum as you could possibly be, and they're doing the same thing. They're learning slow. They're learning to go through all of these positions. They're learning to connect the dots, because how important is it in the Open when you walk up to a barbell and you don't get to take your time?
Yeah.
It has to be second nature.
Yeah.
And when it's too heavy for it not, like, it's not allowed to be ugly anymore, you just fail. Like, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's weird for people because they want to know how many reps at what percentage is going to get them there. And it's like, if you've already reached whatever 90% of your ability, that final 10% is going to be some like very precise tinkering.
Yeah. I was actually talking with 2 of our athletes yesterday about kind of the concept of taking the kind of the little victories and the technique PRs, so to speak. And the athlete, I was talking to him, he was like, yeah, my snatch didn't necessarily go up, or like we spent an entire phase kind of working on skill positional stuff with the snatch. There was no percentages. It was like you pull off the floor and you pause at the knee, then you pause above the knee, then you pause in the power position and you snatch, and then you slowly eliminate pauses as you go. And we didn't really do a test and retest, but what he told me, he was like, man, like 185 used to be that weight that I would walk up to, and I'd be like, I don't know, like it's a quarter moon out, like it's kind of rainy, like there's like humidity's at like 72.5%. That's like my threshold. Like there's a 50% chance I make this lift. And now it's like we spent so much time working on the mechanics and stuff like that and slowing things down and never approaching anywhere near that weight for the stuff that we were doing. And now he's like, now that's a weight that I'm like walking up to and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to hit this 10 times out of 10, almost regardless of how I'm feeling. And to your point in the open reference, it's kind of like when you are learning something new, and granted we have different kind of variations of the same movement, like you might set up differently for a 75-pound snatch than you do for a 225-pound snatch. Like those things are different in our sport, but understanding that when you walk up, you can't have multiple different versions of how to execute that version of the lift. You can't approach 225 and have 3 different ways to make this work, because like you don't know if it's going to. I would rather see the athlete be like, yeah, this is going to look the exact same every single time, no matter what. And we see that with the best in like we just saw it at the CrossFit Games and like the snatch speed ladder. Like everybody's fucking lift looked the same. Like the first round was a little bit quick. That's kind of like the line where it's Metcon level weight versus like Olympic weights. But from the second round and on, at least everybody's shit looked the same. Fraser's lift looked the exact same every time.
That was the best part to me, is you have people who think it's the same person who's like, well, we're doing calories instead of meters. I'm going on a damper 10.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that couldn't make less sense from like a mathematical and physics standpoint. We'll leave that alone for just a second. And our shining example of who you're supposed to be in the sport set his butt in the fast round. He walked up, he ran up to each barbell and found himself in a perfect starting position, right? So it's like, no, you don't need your ass to the moon muscle snatch as you go through this. Yeah. Like that, like spastic thing that we used to see at the beginning of CrossFit, it has no place in our sport if you want to be good. Now, if you can be as good as Fraser and you can sprint to the bar and immediately be in that perfect bottom position, that links back to, surprise, surprise, rep after rep after rep after rep in his previous career coming into CrossFit. But like perfecting being able to do it the right way faster, to me, makes a whole lot more sense than like, let's just completely change everything and act like a psycho, run all around the platform. Like, yeah, okay, maybe the bar speed was a little bit faster or something, but you took way too long to resettle, and then you dropped the bar and it was going all over the place and you tripped over it and fell on your face. Like,
yeah, I think that's a perfect example. Like he's former Olympic weightlifter, ain't no Olympic weightlifter running up to their platform weight and trying to snatch or clean and jerk, right? It is a methodical setup. And like I ventured, you could go onto YouTube and find like a compilation of Liu Xiaojun setup position and just like watch it. I remember watching this video on YouTube or Instagram recently of an NHL goalie. I can't remember who it was. His routine from when he steps out like he's walking out for warm-ups or for like the right before the national anthem, walks out, makes the exact same hand motions in the exact same place on the ice at the exact same time. I love those. It looks like a glitch in the Matrix. Exactly, yeah. And like you could apply the same thing to any like elite level weightlifter, watch their approach, watch their setup, watch their mannerisms. It's all the exact same. And the reason I'm saying that is because, okay, so Fraser had years and years and reps and hundreds of probably thousands of reps of doing that the same way. So why would he do it any differently, when he's going through the snatch speed ladder? Like,
I mean, the real question is, why would you make it harder?
Yeah. Like he's just going to do the same thing. He now just has to do it a little bit faster, but because he only knows how to set up in that one position the entire time, like it's going to look the same.
Right.
So
yeah, one of our really good examples as well. I don't know if people that listen to this follow Tola on Instagram, but I think a lot of people just assume that like he's just a genetic freak. It is what it is. He's stronger than everyone. The amount of
that part's true.
The amount of accessory work and like I mean the list goes on. It's accessory work. It's his diet. Like it's his he's sleeping a certain amount, whatever, but like he's also like I send his warm-ups to people for lifts because he's literally going through, he's able to do barbell therapy with like 95 pounds, which is not easy, and then all of a sudden he is doing like certain movements that I would ask for PVC pipe. He's got 155 on the bar or whatever, but he goes through all of that stuff every single time. And it's like we talk about this, like people want to throw that. I think it's really easy for us to throw that genetics excuse out there, but it's like, you're not outworking him. That's not happening. Right. I guarantee it. You're not doing that many lunges. You're not doing that much positional work as you warm up for your snatch. So like, can you really say that if you had his genetics, you would be that strong? I think the answer is no.
Right.
You wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when we're talking about kind of those habits and stuff like that, it to me, it a lot of times comes down to the law of averages. And a lot of that is also, you can also kind of use that to your advantage when you're trying to start a habit. And it's, you don't need to, if your metric for success is immediately going from 0 to 100% adherence, then like you're fucked. If you're currently at 0% adherence and you literally make one single attempt, you have just dragged that average a little bit closer to the 100% adherence. And that doesn't mean that you can go backward. You can't go backwards. You certainly can, but eventually all of your habits are the cumulative effect of all the little things that you've done before that. And you have somewhere when you die, maybe you can scroll through like your stats and be like what was my adherence?
The scary part is you might actually be able to do that at a certain point.
So sick. I've thought about that so many times. Like when I die, am I going to be able to find out?
They're going to be able to download
happened
your
to
brain.
Me? Like, yeah, why did I PR that day? Like at that specific time, at that,
Yep. I think it's important because we went left, right, up, down, diagonal. We went in every direction with this to recap a little bit before sort of switching gears. I think what we tried to say in a bunch of different ways is that number one, you got to have a little bit of humility and be a little bit nicer to yourself. And then you have to make whatever it is that you're hoping to achieve so insanely easy that you're starting to like stack, create these steps.
Yeah.
And you're eventually going to create and build the infrastructure to get to the point that you want to be, but you're not going to be able to immediately transport yourself there. So you have to take these insanely manageable chunks. Like how far could I back out the idea that I want to get better at snatching? You could back it out all the way to writing go to the gym on your to-do list in the morning. Like that would be a massive step in getting towards. If you don't go to the gym, like how are you going to get this done?
Yep.
And then you touched on it a little bit. We did a Misfit Musing recently, but this idea of finality, this idea that like you're going to be done really with anything is just like, you're probably not going to die, get fired, get divorced like regularly. You know what I mean?
Please no.
Like you're thinking about these things that would actually potentially mean finality. Yeah. And in a lot of them, they don't even actually mean that.
Yeah.
Because you got to go get a job and you have to interact with people and people go apart and come back together. Yeah. Like this idea that we're searching for the end, like I finally made it. Like the person who asked this question is probably not thinking, well, I got these 6 habits and once I get them, like I'm kicking up on a beach somewhere. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean,
it's not ending. So if it's not ending, you can cut yourself a little bit of fucking slack and realize that this journey is indefinite. Like a little bit better when it's indefinite is a lot less scary than like, I want to lose 30 pounds by January 7th. Like, how about you just figure out what the best way is for you to live, and then, it'll take care of itself.
Yeah. You got to lose a half a pound to get to 30 pounds. Like
right.
You don't get to pass that. Yeah. And I think you think about that, like from that perspective, like how many times have you said to yourself, if only I had this, if only I made a little bit more money, if only I had one more hour in the day, and then whatever happens and you get a little bit more money, you get a little bit more time, like
you just move the needle.
Yeah. Fuck, I wish I had a little bit more time. Ah, man, I wish I didn't have as many things to do. I wish, I wish I didn't have, I don't know if you'd say, I wish I didn't have all this money, but whatever, you know what I mean? And yeah, I think I kind of lost my train of thought here.
Well, my mind immediately goes to people people essentially look out at someone like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, like these people, and they're like, why are they still working? If I had X amount of dollars, I would not be doing.
You wouldn't. You'd be bored as fuck.
Exactly. And that goes all the way back to just evolution and biology. No. We are made to prioritize being a meaningful member of our tribe. That's the reward system. That's the biological reward system. So the idea that someone that's that driven would just quit at a certain point doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like maybe, let's say you randomly acquired that money, you'd want to run a charity or do something, but you're not going to stop.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, I've made it, so now I can be a bump on a log and like enforce self-imprisonment somewhere in a cabin somewhere. Like, you're going to hate that 6 days in. You're going to normalize and go, oh, can I get my job back?
Yeah, like, well, and think when you go on, you're like, fuck, I can't wait for that vacation. And like a weekend, you're just like, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm ready to go back home. But the interesting, because I think everybody has, and I've always played that game, like, oh, what would I do if I had $1 million, that sort of thing. And it's like, what would I do if I made 10 grand more a year, 20 grand or whatever, what you're actually asking yourself is, what if I snapped my fingers and these changes happened? Like my bank account, I all of a sudden had 5 extra zeros in my bank account, but nothing else changed. And the problem with that is it's completely illogical to assume that you would go from exactly where you are right now
and
to
not
that
incrementally get
being
there.
The only thing that changed. It's kind of like developing that habit. Like, Bezos didn't go from 0 to $1 billion. It was 0 to 10 grand to 20 grand, and it was like
took him a long time.
It takes a long time, and just like we're building that habit, it takes a long time, and you're never there. And that's why we see those people who are just like, why don't you just give it away, or why don't you just stop and retire somewhere? It's like, I'm not just making this money now. Like, I didn't just start making it randomly. Like, this accumulated, and I changed my life around to accommodate this, and then my lifestyle is now such that, like, these are the things that I want to do with the money that I have, and like these are the things that I can do to make progress in my life and other people's lives and stuff like that. And it's that's an easy question to be like, what'd you do if you had $1 million? Like, well, am I standing here and all of a sudden you just handed me $1 million like in a suitcase? Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know, probably run or something. Like, go to a bank, like try to outrun everybody else who's about to chase me, run to a bank. But yeah.
All right, Misfits, we're going to take a short break to give a shout out to our show sponsors, Proper Fuel. Head to properfuel.co for Proper Recovery, your complete post-workout nutrition solution. Protein, carbs, electrolytes, creatine, and a digestive enzyme if you're worried about what whey does to your stomach. All of this is in one jug. Mix is really easy. Tastes really good. Properfuel.co. Use the code word MISFIT to save on your first order.
And don't forget to also supplement your recovery with that Pure Spectrum CBD. Personally, I've been using that a little bit more frequently lately, both the tincture and the salve. Every once in a while, kind of like clockwork, the knees start to act up a little bit. So that salve is really good kind of after the shower, because otherwise it just like the water just like runs down your knees and with the salve on there. So post shower, like rub that into the knees, and then actually been kind of doing something similar to what you do, Drew, and that's like, I get home and it's a little bit of the tincture, and that's kind of like the commence deregulation, down regulation from the day. So PureSpectrumCBD.com, use the code word Misfit to save a little bit on your order.
And last, but very specifically not least, is Sharpen the Axe. It is Monday, and in a few days, it will be Thursday, Thanksgiving. You're going to eat. You're going to love it. You're going to take a nap. You're going to have the nap be just a little bit longer, because when the clock strikes midnight Eastern, it is Black Friday. This is not only a sale. This is the biggest release we have ever done. Like, I'm scared to be underneath the weight of all of the gear that is above us right now.
The literal poundage.
You do not want to hear an ad that's as long as it would take for me to explain everything that's going to be in it. What you need to know is it's sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word unprepared to save, or use the code word Keala, Keala, to get 10% off and to donate 10% of your order to the Keala Foundation. Once again, that is sharpentheaxeco.com. Black Friday, 24 hours only. Biggest release we've ever had. All right, back to the episode. So with the kind of the groundwork laid for what our ideas on the topic of like how to build positive habits, I always think it's important to be able to sort of relate to the listeners and talk a little bit about like our own habits or our own thoughts surrounding ourselves, as opposed to, I think because we're coaches, remote coaches, programmers, often our point of view is for like, how do I help somebody else?
Yeah.
And the idea of helping yourself is very interesting. For me, I have had to like be as like soft and like kid gloves and as nice to myself as possible to accomplish these things, because I naturally tend to want to figure out complicated things, like figure out like what's the best way to do X. And my curiosity leads me down these paths where I'm trying to figure out, human movement, clothing design, like whatever, all these different things that we do here. And then I don't leave that much brain space for like clean your office, like, eat healthy, exercise, all these other things that I think are very second nature to other people are extremely hard for me. And I don't think they're hard because it's hard to, take the like piece of paper and throw it in the trash can. Obviously, we joked about the glass of water earlier.
Yeah.
But it's hard to prioritize that for me.
Yeah.
So for me, I've literally had to be like, this is your default setting kind of so far in your life, but you feel 1,000 times better when your office is clean, when you do exercise, when you do eat healthier. I always like being on the other side of the fence, and I, for the longest time, couldn't get myself to get to the other side of the fence. So I have to over systemize everything, absolutely everything. My to-do lists, I have my own system where I have like my day-to-day, piece of paper, my planner that has all of like literal icons and check boxes for the things that I want to try to accomplish in a day that are more personal, right next to the things I want to accomplish for work. And then next to that is a book with my like more long-term type things, to-do list. Like, I don't need to get this done today, but I got to remember that it exists and that it's there.
Yep.
And I have hampers all over my house. I have one next to my bed. I have one next to my sink. I have one next to the shower, and I have one in the laundry room. And I've had to buy, and what keeps happening is my wife takes the hampers and uses them. So I went out and bought 4 more hampers. Like, we got like 12. And it's like, there's no chance.
Yeah, that Maya, I'll never be out of hampers.
Never.
You can never take away all my hampers.
And that seems ridiculous, but it works for me. Like,
wait, is it to clean up?
Yeah,
like
it's literally, I had piles of clothes in 4 different places. And by piles, I mean like a pair of pants, whatever I wore the night before, and it could be like 2 days worth.
Yeah.
But when you have that in 4 spots, like that equates to an entire hamper. So I have a hamper in every place that I would take my clothes off. And for me, it's like, okay.
Wait, can you go through the list again of where I'm trying to find out if this is weird or not?
Why do you think I have a hamper in my office?
Yeah, hold on a second. There's a hamper in Sherb's office too.
Explaining that could be a whole episode.
Unrelated.
Yes, unrelated. So it seems ridiculous, but that's to me where the like kid gloves, being nice to yourself, the humility of like, I'm able to figure out some pretty complicated shit and I can't put my fucking clothes away. Like, but I have to realize that as a human being to get from the point where I'm like, okay, my mind is at ease when things are clean, but I don't clean. Yeah. So what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I get there? And to me, that starts to put you into a mindset like that. Your first victory like that puts you into a mindset of, okay, what are the other things? Like, what are the other things that I'm trying to accomplish? And I mean, I have the water bottle next to the sink with the salt in the morning. Like it's right there. I know I'm going to make coffee. So I know I'm going to go over to the sink and turn it on hot water. And I try to tell myself, no, it's cold water first. It has to be cold water first. Then it can be hot water.
That's kind of interesting because I think I'm probably a little bit more the opposite. I'm good at, and this is probably just because I sometimes will get overwhelmed looking at a lot of significant things to do. I do enjoy the feeling of checking something off.
Right.
So lately I've been, my Mondays are really dedicated to like, I take an hour, probably just an hour or so to outline the things that I want to get done in the week. And those are my more checklist items. They're the things that aren't necessarily going to move the needle on their own, but they're part of a larger, kind of the larger picture that will move the needle because I need to get those small things done in order for the big things to kind of move in the right direction. And the reason I say that is because I actually kind of start my day by doing the really mindless things, the kind of answering the help tickets, the like just the super simple stuff that are almost mindless to just kind of get that momentum going to accomplish
Getting shit done feels
Yeah.
good, even if it's smaller.
Yeah. And then I think that momentum carries over to like, okay, I got that easy thing done. This next one, this is a little bit requires a little bit more brain power, but it's still pretty easy. So I'll do that. And because I've read people are like, oh, I like to do my most cerebral, most intellectually demanding things like first thing in the morning. That's when I'm wired up. And then the afternoon after that, that 3 p.m. feeling hits, it's like, just like cruise to the end of the day with the mindless stuff. And that's probably more so because my schedule doesn't really allow for that. In the afternoon, my time gets blocked off by things like coaching and stuff like that, things that I absolutely have to do, and I don't get to decide what gets done during those times. But the Monday morning kind of, here's the things that I want for the week and trying not to make it so overwhelming. And then I do have a similar list like you have that's like, here are some, and I've actually tried to trim it down to like literally 2 or 3 significant things that are just like the needle movers, so to speak. Those are the needle moving things. And it's like, okay, I can then look at those things every once in a while and then more easily digest, like, here are the 5 smaller things that need to get done in order for that one thing to get done. And then here are the 5 like super easy checklist items. And then those are the things that get on the Monday morning kind of task list and stuff like that. So, for me, like it is that easy barrier to entry thing when it comes to getting things done on a daily basis. And then when we're talking more about lifestyle stuff, it's the literally setting up your physical space in such a manner that like flows naturally. It's the same reason like the the grocery store is like how grocery stores are organized and stuff. The first thing you walk into is the like the cookies and the stuff like that, like at the front right before like the vegetable section and stuff like that. And then you start to go down the aisles and it's way easier to get into a bad habit in that sense. So if you instead, okay, as soon as I walk into the grocery store, I turn right and I just stay around the outside of the grocery store, my shopping cart's going to be full of good stuff. As soon as I walk into my apartment, keys go here. I've got my water next to the sink. I've got my cookbook right next to the fridge because I'm going to pull a recipe or I want to be able to reference that really quickly, which also, by the way, has generally healthy recipes in it. So like if my goal was to eat healthy, it's like, maybe step one was put the cookbook next to the fridge,
Right.
like the little thing like that.
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking of when you said that is how we set up our new gym. So like not that new now, but
Yeah.
we didn't have a way in the old gym for someone to walk in and not feel overwhelmed. Like we didn't know how to get someone in, and like you can forget how overwhelming a CrossFit community can be, especially the one that lived in the previous facility.
Just the black walls with like people walking around shirtless, like rolling around on the floor. Like
So one of the things that was really important to us is you walk in and not only does it like look good, like that's a huge part of it, I think. But like pre-COVID, there was someone standing there that was ready to, say, hey, like,
welcome to the gym.
Welcome
Drew.
to
Good to see you today.
Yeah, like let's talk about this, and this. Like, and you can, it's not, you don't walk up to a cliff and look up and go, how do I get up there? You walk up to a ramp, or you're taking the stairs.
Sure.
And I think it's a good analogy to just say that's what we need to do to create habits. We need to have the same system.
Yeah.
You don't want to walk into, the gym with, hit 'em up by Tupac playing on, volume 12 out of 10, like lights are
reverberating.
Sherb's in his underwear, pulling like 4,000 calories per hour on a skier. There's shit flying in all these different places. Like that honestly is one of the better visuals that I can think of how you could get yourself to have a positive habit. That's terrifying. This is going to be my new hobby.
Yeah.
You're telling me this is fun. You're telling me people come here to hang out with each other. How could you possibly hang out with that guy?
On earth.
Exactly.
This is the most fun place on earth. Like, hold on a second.
Wait a minute. So just this idea that like, man, you gotta put the breadcrumbs out for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what's the most challenging about it.
Yeah.
So we can't always have someone else tell us like, oh, I struggle with that too. Don't worry about it. Like I, decided that I was going to do this ridiculously simple thing. It's hard. I think it's hard for people to make that leap for themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they're telling themselves that they're, inadequate or intelligent or not able. And it's like, no, it's just really hard to have 10,000 positive habits.
For people kind of in our situation where it's like a coach, when you are perceived as the one, like the all-knowing being.
Right.
It's like someone is coming to you for a habit and then or to help them improve some part of their life, and the natural assumption is that you already have your shit together, which is true.
Yes.
Yes, I know exactly what I'm doing all the time.
One other thing, once you start to get into a habit, I think that's important to touch on before we go to final thoughts, is iteration. So like I'm working through trying to figure out what the best way to set up my day and my week and my month is. In my original to-do list was just everything that I could think of on a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's tricky.
And the idea now that I have the day-to-day thing, and I have I have the days laid out, and I can say, okay, do I have to write this article? But on Thursday, that to me completely changes my mindset of Monday's looking pretty doable. But if I went in, which is what I used to do, and put down as many things as I had in my brain on the piece of paper, it's like, okay, I can't get all this done. It's not possible. How could I do this all at once? So when I took it, from this like laundry list to, okay, but I get to spread it out now on the course of these days, like the idea of writing a to-do on a Monday in the Friday block is like, that's easy.
Yeah.
It's not even Tuesday. I'm good. I'm ready to rock. All right.
Yeah.
So the original question was day-to-day routine and how to build positive habits.
Yeah. All right. I got a decent final thought here. So we talked a lot about how, at least the way that we kind of think of it, and that's all, I'm going to take the example of kind of setting yourself up or setting up your physical space, your work flow, so to speak, whatever it is, setting that up to be incredibly accessible, manageable, doable, and even putting down the Matthew McConaughey take a shits on the checklist to make sure that you do have that assuming that that's something that you kind of feed off of, like giving yourself that check mark or whatever. But to me, kind of the follow through on that is almost celebrating those successes in the same way that you would if you kind of maybe taking this to into the gym. If it's like, if you're probably going to celebrate when you hit a snatch PR. Are you going to celebrate when you spent 20 minutes on the recovery day with a PVC pipe and you just work through the ranges of motion or the positions very, very slowly and methodically and feel like you learned something in that sense? Like, are you going to celebrate putting the bottle of vitamin C out, not even trying to take it, just setting it out there? Are you going to celebrate taking the cap off and putting the pill in the lid? Don't take it. Like, you have to kind of accept those things as the little mini victories. And I'm not saying, don't bar slam the bottle of vitamin C, like in the same way, in that celebration manner, but like understand that like doing those little things is what adds up to successfully being able to do that big thing. I think kind of the takeaway is that once you establish, maybe you kind of revamp the way that you think of routines or getting things done or your daily workflow, whatever it is. Don't forget to kind of give yourself a pat on the back for doing even what seems like the most medial, trivial tasks, because that's like that is part of getting to that bigger overarching goal.
Yeah. I've got a couple. The first one is something that we touched on without calling it out, and that's the idea of reverse engineering different scenarios. So we keep using fitness podcasts. We keep using the idea of you can figure out how to clean your room in the same way that you figured out how to PR your snatch. Like, it's an iterative process. You have to start going a little bit slower. You have to put 4 hampers in your room. Because prerequisite because that's going to make it more challenging. I have a returnables. I have a trash can next to my nightstand with a clink bag in it because I bring seltzer and stuff upstairs all the time. Yeah. And then it's like seltzer graveyard. And what I used to do is wait until I knock like 12 over in the middle of the night and scare everyone and the dogs. And it's like, okay, how about, so I like, and that's how ridiculous this type of stuff is for me.
Yeah.
Like, I have to, like, I don't know. I have deodorant everywhere. I have deodorant in my backpack. I have deodorant in the drawer. I have deodorant downstairs in my house.
Deodorant under my beanie.
Because if I leave the bathroom, but then get my shirt on the way to leaving the house and don't go back to my bedroom, I'm not going back.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. But
that's the point of no return.
There's deodorant downstairs near the coffee station. Like, so I
still have a chance.
Yes. Like this stuff, that's how ridiculous this stuff is for me. But I can start to think about why that makes sense because I've chased so many physical pursuits in my life. Yeah. Like, I am able to go to it and say, okay, so like one of the biggest things that changed the way that I played football is I went to a camp and they talked about throwing motion. Like, how do you load with a football properly and throw it? And like, it's dumb stuff like that. That's like, okay, but they made us stand there and they're like, J-motion, just over and over, moving my arm out like this, which to me is similar to, I've got, CBD bottles in 5 different places because it's like, okay, it's right there. It's right there. It's right there. It's right there. Yeah. And I try to keep it in my mindset. And to me, that is like a representation of repetition that I had to use to even learn the things that I either was already good at just naturally or things that I wanted to be good at. Like, I'm like, okay, but those things didn't appear. I just enjoyed the process. Yeah. So then I asked myself, what was the process? Okay, I started here and then I did this and then I did this. So I have started reverse engineering that to what most people would think is the most basic bullshit in life. But for me, I'm like, oof, that's a whole thing, man.
Nailed it.
Like, I'll stare at this spreadsheet
Blackberry seltzer can recycled.
I have a clink bag next to my desk at home as well.
Yep. Okay.
I have the trash can there. I have all that stuff because it's like, yeah, I'll stare at this spreadsheet for 6 hours, but what the hell am I going to do with this can? The trash can's upstairs.
That's so far away.
It's crazy. So I have trash cans all over the place. And I'm going to say it again because I have to, you have to be so much nicer to yourself for this shit to take place. If you say to yourself, I struggle with this personally, and like, oh my goodness, like this is the most simple thing, and you start to judge yourself for it, you're making, like, you were on a level playing field with the thing you're trying to get better at, and you just sunk way below it.
This wouldn't be nearly as fun if you weren't laughing at me, laughing at you with click bags everywhere. Like,
yes.
Like I'm still gonna laugh at you. I think that's hilarious, but like,
right,
it works. So,
yeah,
and like, doesn't matter if I'm laughing at it. Like, it works for you. So
yeah, for sure. All right, ladies and gents, that was the Unprepared, Sort of Prepared podcast by Misfit Athletics. Thank you again to our show sponsors, Proper Fuel. Head to properfuel.co and use the code word Misfit to save on your very first order of your complete post-workout nutrition needs. Pure Spectrum CBD. Head to purespectrumcbd.com and use the code word Misfit to save on all of their products. And last but not least, Sharpen the Axe. Head to sharpentheaxeco.com. You can use the code word Unprepared, or you can use the code word Kiala and donate 10% of your order to the Kiala Foundation. As always, I'm at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let us know what you thought about this episode and what you'd like to hear next.